guys, and welcome back to the Squats and Sushi podcast. So today's topic is going to be about what we wish we knew before we got into fitness and before we got into competing. Because we both think that these are two really important things. This is a really important thing to consider before getting into competing, before getting into fitness, because I know personally I've wasted like 2 years. My first 2 years, I didn't know anything. If I knew what I know now, I would have saved myself so much time. My first ever prep would have been better.
Yeah.
So, and
when you first started, did you even have a coach, or did you kind of do your own thing?
So the way I got into it is I actually had a PT because I was so scared to train on my own, which I think is quite a common thing for people.
So common.
Yeah. So I had a PT, and then I started seeing pictures in the gym of like people competing, like with a trophy.
Yeah.
And I was like, whoa, I want to look like that. Like I want to have a six-pack. That was always the dream, to have a six-pack.
The abs.
I didn't even care about anything else. I just wanted a six-pack.
Yeah.
And then basically I got introduced to someone who competed. Okay. It was a woman. And then she was my first ever like proper coach. So that's kind of how I got into it.
Okay, so you didn't go into it blindly. Like you didn't try and do your own thing or like find a program. You kind of always had someone there.
Yeah, when I went into fitness specifically, but before getting into like training, I did like low carb dieting and like running to try and lose body fat.
So much running and so many crunches.
Yeah. So that's the way it kind of started for me. What about for you?
For me, so I was into modeling, and then I had an ex-boyfriend introduce the gym to me, got into it, but I was just very afraid of lifting weights. So everything that I did was 5 pounds at max. Like I said, it was so many ab circuits, because that was the main focus. I just wanted the abs. I never trained my arms because I was so scared that they were going to get huge. And I couldn't as a model, right? Everything was
exactly.
And tiny. And I did so much cardio. I would run for, I don't even know how I had this stamina, this endurance, because I ate so little, but I ran for like an hour and a half at a time, almost every day.
That's mad.
That's crazy.
Would you say that you were scared to lift weights specifically because you didn't want to get big, or because you were scared of like going in that area in the gym?
No, not at all. Like we mentioned before, a lot of people have this gym intimidation. And they're scared that they're going to go in and they don't really know how to perform certain movements, and they're afraid that they're going to get judged, or they're afraid that people are going to look at them. And in reality, we need to break that too. No one cares. Everybody's doing their own thing.
I think that's one of the biggest problems for females, is that obviously alongside them being scared that they'll get too big, they're just scared to go in that area in the gym, and they think, oh, am I performing this correctly? What if someone laughs at me? Everyone's looking at me. I did have that at one point. I did have that for sure. And that's one of the reasons why I got PT, because I'm like, well, if I have a PT, no one's gonna judge me, So, and plus I knew that if I were to go in the gym when the PT isn't there and people have seen me with the PT, they'll be like, oh, she knows what she's doing,
Oh, okay. Got it. No, I was shameless. Even when I started getting into the weight section, I didn't care at all. I would even go up to people and ask like, oh, am I doing this right?
That's really good.
And then have someone help me. Yeah. So I was never shy or scared in that way.
Yeah. That's really good.
But that's another thing that we should comment on. Like anybody who goes to the gym, they'd be more than happy, especially for a beginner, to come up and ask them a question.
Yeah.
Like people are open to sharing and to teaching.
Yeah, 100%. That's the one thing that I always, like when I was working as a PT, that's the one thing that I admired about people when they come up and they ask. Because like at the end of the day, that's what you're there for, is to help people. And if certain PTs make you feel, because I have heard this before, that certain PTs make people feel like less superior than them. It's like
dumb
why?
almost for not knowing.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's start with what we would recommend or what we would say to anyone who's looking to start training. So just general population, someone looking to get fit. I would say both for fat loss and if they just want to build muscle. So in both scenarios,
okay,
we recommend.
Well, obviously, one, I would say get a coach. But besides that, and getting into more detail, the one mistake that I made, I was just striving for numbers. I thought that I just need to get stronger.
Yeah.
But I would do it with shit form. So know that when you're starting your journey, you're going in there, don't compare yourself to other people too, because I would look at the girl next to me and see that she's curling like 15-pound dumbbells and here I am, I can't even do 5 and I'm trying for the 10s already. So that's wrong. Like start at a lightweight and improve your form. That is everything.
Yeah, 100%.
And the numbers will come with time.
Yeah, I think that's right, because it's like called ego lifting is like the correct term for it. But I was there as well. You look at people in the gym and you're thinking, well, if I show that I'm stronger, that means I probably know what I'm doing, kind of thing.
Right.
And that's literally what I would do. And I remember the sessions when I wouldn't even feel the muscle working. I would just lift the weight because I'm like, it was especially true with hip thrusts. I even did one time, I did 200 kilos. And I swear I did not feel my glutes working at all. The muscle that I felt working was like even my quads to some extent, but it was like quads and hamstrings. And I was just like, oh, but I'm doing 200 kilos. So that must be a good thing. Yeah. And all that does is lead to injuries. No one gives a fuck. Sorry. But, you know, at the end of the day, people might see you in the gym and go, oh, wow, she's doing 200 kilos. But then they forget about it the next day. So it's like, why would you like make your progress be affected by other people? So you have to always remember that this is your journey and no one else's. So why does it matter what other people do?
And like you said, lifting like that, you're just going to get injured. And you're going to put yourself back. Like you could have been progressing if you lifted smart, but because you got injured, now you have to take things a step back. I got injured. I remember I used to overhead press a lot with the barbell. And it was, if you have terrible form on that, that's easy for you to.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. And I did something to like my trap shoulder. Yeah. Took months to recover from.
Yeah, I think it's like, it is the most common thing though, that people get in the gym, lift as heavy as they can, and then they end up taking a step back anyway and reassess their form, you know? So that's the first thing we would say, is really focus on your form. And if you're not sure, like if you're doing it correctly or not, think about when you do an exercise, what is the purpose of the exercise? So if you're doing like lateral raises, you need to feel it in your shoulders, not in your traps. If you feel it in your traps, you need to really think about changing your form.
Exactly. And if you're not feeling, ask yourself, like you said, where am I supposed to be feeling this exercise? And if you're performing it and you don't feel it, don't continue. I've done this before in the beginning. I'd be rowing for my back and I'm like, I don't really feel my back, but I'm too embarrassed and I'm not going to stop to fix anything. No, pause. Maybe it's the angle. Maybe you're going too heavy. Maybe pick a different exercise that you connect well with, you know? There's so many other things that you can do.
Yeah, I'm definitely guilty of that, thinking that there are certain exercises that are must-dos. And it wasn't until like I really started to get into training and getting my PT diploma that I realized there are no like exercises that you have to do in order to see progress. So, and this is because everyone's body is different. You know, some people have longer legs. So for example, squats might be an exercise that is very difficult for them to perform. They might benefit from doing something like a leg press. So really think about that. And if you don't know how to like distinguish whether it's a good exercise for you or not, I would say take form videos, see how you're progressing. Are you able to progress on an exercise? Because even with Annabelle, like we've had exercises that we've taken out because like you just didn't agree with them, you know? And I think it's really important to try things out and then give it some time. If you're not progressing, then sure, remove that exercise, you know? Or you might be surprised. There's some exercises that you thought, you know, you wouldn't do well with, but you actually do amazing with.
Curtsy lunges. I used to always think that it was a shitty movement, but was in my program once and I connected so well with it.
Yeah, exactly. So that's the thing about bodybuilding. It's like, it's not powerlifting. It's not you have to bench press, deadlift, and squat. You can literally do so many different exercises. There's so many variations. So, you know, you might as well try them.
What else did I want to say? Novelty. Like people wanting to switch exercises or do like the fancy movements, right? I think as a beginner, focus on the basics. That is something that I wish I did. Mastered just the fundamental movements, like a squat, a hip thrust, you know, a shoulder press, rather than doing donkey kicks like I mentioned before, or something on a ball. Like, why complicate things? You know what I mean?
100%.
Yeah.
And I completely agree, because when I first got into training, one of the exercises that I always made sure I included was like those donkey kicks.
Yeah.
And I would do them on like the Smith machine, and it was so difficult because the Smith machine kept clicking back in, and I had to turn it back out, and it was literally like the most annoying thing. And yeah, it's one of those exercises that I think so many people do, and it's like advertised as like, this is the best glute exercise. When in reality, guys, when you look on social media and you see someone with a really good body and you see what exercises they do, right? They didn't necessarily do that exercise to get that physique. So like, let's say I've been training for 3 years. I'm like very strong on squats. And then for the past 3 months, I've been posting videos of me doing kickbacks. Everyone's going to think I got that body from doing the kickbacks. Yeah. So just be aware that what you see online is not always like the full picture. And definitely stick to, my advice is the compounds. If you can get strong on compound lifts, you are going to build muscle. 100%. Whereas on accessory movements, like how fast can you progress a kickback? Like, you get to a point where you just can't progress it because it's such a small muscle that it targets, that you just can't actually progress it. Yeah, so for sure you need to stick to something.
So we said stick with the basics.
I would also say another thing is frequency of training. So I remember when I first started, I wanted to train like 7 days a week, 6-7 days a week. Like, the more I train, the more muscle
more is better.
Yeah. And what you realize is, because you're not recovering from your sessions, because you literally don't let your body recover, you actually don't get stronger. You basically maintain where you're at. And it's really frustrating. So the longer that you train, you'll find that you need less sessions, because you're lifting such heavy weights that your body needs to recover. Whereas obviously, if you're a beginner and you don't know how to train with intensity, you probably could get away with 6 sessions a week, but I still wouldn't recommend that. I would say focus on the quality of your session rather than just like going in 6 times a week, you know?
Do you ever get girls? It's so common. They'll come to us and they'll say, "Oh, I'm training 5 days a week or 6 days a week and doing cardio every other day." And then what we do, we just take it down a notch, and we're like 4 times a week, cardio maybe twice or 3 times, and they're like, "What? You're telling me to do less work?" But it's like you said, quality over quantity.
100%.
Yeah.
That's the most common thing, is that people overtrain and they plateau in their progress. And when you tell them to train less, they're like, well, if I'm plateauing and I start to train less, like, that's going to make me plateau more.
It's just like food. They come to you eating so little, you increase their intake, they're like, what? Now I have to eat more?
Yeah, it's so funny, isn't it? And the hardest thing is trying to let people understand why it's better to do that. And like, the first thing people say is, oh, it's too much food, I can't eat it. But it's like, if you train with purpose and intensity, you will need that much food.
That. Yeah.
Your body needs the food to recover and to build the muscle.
Yeah.
So yeah, look at your training frequency. Make sure that you're not overtraining. And obviously from a nutritional standpoint, I know that a lot of the time girls especially get into the gym because they want to lose weight. Mm-hmm. And so it is very difficult to make them eat more, but you need to understand that if you want to lose weight, sure, go into a calorie deficit, but what's going to happen is you're going to have no shape. You can lose the fat, but you're going to have no shape, right? Mm-hmm. So that's why I would recommend for you to eat properly. So eat at maintenance and just build muscle, just train, and start to actually change. Mm-hmm. You'll start transforming basically, or recomping.
Because the shape comes with the muscle being built.
Exactly.
You've been there, right? I think I remember you mentioning that you lost all the body fat, you went on a cut, but then you didn't have the shape, and someone made like a comment, right?
Yeah. So what happened was I was only obsessed with fat loss. I didn't care about muscle. And I lost like 15 kilos, but like it was a mixture of muscle and fat, obviously. Yeah. And I had no glutes because genetically I just don't have any glutes. And I remember an old teacher from my school, she literally said, like, because she saw me after the summer and she was like, you have no bum or no butt, basically. And that really hurt.
That triggered you, yeah.
And I was like, I need to do something about that. So just bear in mind that when you're chasing a specific goal, like, you're never going to be satisfied. That's just the nature of humans. You lose 10 kilos and then you look at yourself and you're like, well, that's not how I thought I would look like. And it's because you're probably the picture that you've seen on Instagram of the person you want to look like, they're a combination of muscle and being lean. Mm-hmm. So potentially,
and they've been doing it for years.
Yeah, exactly. So potentially what I'd recommend is, like, have you ever had people ask you the question of, is it better to cut first or is it better to build muscle first, right? Mm-hmm. So it depends, because if you're someone who's very overweight, like obese, I would say focus on fat loss, because you want to be healthier, and just weighing less is healthier for that person. But if you're kind of in this in between, I would say focus on just maintenance and recomping. Get yourself to a good place so then you have somewhere to cut from. That's what our advice would be. Definitely. Well, I'm just trying to think, what else? Is there anything else you could think of?
We didn't make any notes, guys. That's what we're like thinking.
Keep it simple. I guess that's a good one. Because there's lots of stuff you're going to see online, like, oh yeah, the best way to build muscle is doing this, this, and that. But, this split, make sure you train this muscle 5 times a week. Make sure you eat this specific food. But in all honesty, like, there's so many different ways that work. Mm-hmm. So the best thing is to find what you can stick to for a long period of time.
Yes.
That's the magic.
Consistency is where it's at. And if you don't have a sustainable program, you're not going to be consistent.
Exactly.
And then know that, like, I did a post on this yesterday. There are going to be off days. You're not going to be 100%.
Yeah, 100%.
Even elite athletes, they have off days. Yeah. So, don't be too hard on yourself when you're starting.
Yeah, for sure.
Am I out of focus?
Yeah, slightly. Oh yeah, there.
Okay.
So just don't overcomplicate it, and like, you can always message Annabelle or me if you ever have any specific questions about that. But it just comes with experience. Like, we've both been in the fitness industry I've been in it like 6 years. Annabelle, how long have you been in it?
It's something like that, along those lines. Yeah.
So, and you just learn over time. You just learn as you go on, because it's experience,
Exactly.
So, yeah. When it comes to competing, so this is a completely different ballgame, in my opinion. And a lot of people get into training because they want to compete. But in all honesty, you need time before even thinking about going on stage, because it's not the same thing as a fat loss.
It's not.
12-week fat loss. And unfortunately, when I got into it, that's one thing I wanted to do is like, as soon as I started training in January, I wanted to compete in September. And like, yes, you can, but you're not going to look good and you're not going to do well. That's just the reality of it, you know?
Yeah.
So
Did you have someone take you through it, or did someone tell you, no, you need more time before you step on stage?
So what happened was, it was, so I started training in January, and then in the summer, I started kind of like prepping for the comp with that person I met, the female who was my first ever coach.
Yeah.
And I just, honestly, my body just didn't, it looked like it wasn't changing. Like my weight was coming down, but because I didn't have a lot of muscle, you can expect what happens is when you don't have muscle and you just start losing body fat, you don't really see any more muscle because you've already like got lean, if that makes sense, right?
Yeah.
And so like I would just get leaner, and what would happen is like you would just see more ab definition, but that's it. There was no more delts, there was no more like quads or anything. And like I just thought I looked awful compared to like a lot of the other people I've seen online.
Yeah.
And I just kind of didn't want to do it anymore. I was like, oh, so that's how I look.
Yeah.
So then I basically just completely got rid of that idea of competing, trained for 3 years. And then I was dating a guy who was really into competing. And he was the one who said, oh, why don't you compete? Like, you've put on so much muscle over the past 3 years. You might as well do it now. And I said, yeah, why not? But again, I went in. Say that again?
He took you through that prep.
No. So I actually got a different coach. By this point, I had already left that coach quite a while ago. And I started working with someone. But I didn't do an off season with them. So literally we just started prep like a month after working together. And honestly, that is one of the worst things I've done because my body wasn't ready to go through a contest prep. I had to lose a lot of weight. So I started my prep at 70 kilos and I stepped on stage at 56. So I lost 14 kilos in 24 weeks. That is a lot of weight to lose in that amount of time. So what ends up happening is your body is just stressed. My midsection did not look good. It just could have looked better basically. And it's when your cortisol level is high, which is your stress levels, your stomach tends to not look as good as it could, not as tight. And just generally, I just looked like towards the end when we were carbing me up, like my body just wouldn't fill out. And it just, if I were to eat more food, I would just get bloated, you know? So it was very difficult to peak me. And all of this could have been easily avoided if my prep was shorter. So this is another thing, like I now believe in short preps because if you do like a long prep, what happens to your hormones and to your body? I mean, it's obvious what's going to happen. So if I could take back time, I think I did the right thing to train for 3 years first before competing. But I also think I should have had a structured off season. So we had some numbers to go off of, like, okay, this is what her calories got up to. So we can work from there. You know, this is this training split that works for her.
Yeah.
And all of that. So yeah, but again, I think anyone you ask, Annabelle, your first ever prep, you know, was it good?
Me.
It was, yeah.
Could it have been better? 100%. But you got to go through it.
Yeah. I feel like going through a prep, the first one for anyone is always going to be a bit like, could have been better.
Yeah.
So rather than just jumping into it, I would say try and get yourself ready for it. Work with someone for at least a few months so they know.
Extended period. Yeah, exactly. I was going to say, don't hop into getting a coach and then doing a show.
Yeah.
I think a good coach would be like, you know, let's have a couple of months under our belt so I can understand how your body works. And then we can think about going into a contest prep.
Yeah. And a lot of people think that that's like a way that coaches sell coaching,
just to
like
get money.
Oh yeah, like, oh, I'm only.
No, but I think a coach accepting you for a contest prep without taking all of these things into consideration is taking your money.
Exactly. So when you hear coaches say, you know, oh no, I need to work with you first for a few months, it's only because they want you to do well. They care about your health.
Yes.
If someone just takes you on, puts you through a contest prep, like, where are they going to get the numbers from? It's not, there's no magic calculator online that's going to tell you, like, this is how much this person needs to have. Like,
right.
Experience, you know? Because the amount of times I've literally taken a client and I look at how much they're eating, and then you put their information into a calculator and it gives you a completely different number. So it just shows that everyone's body is different. You can't
Completely
use those
different.
calculators.
Yeah.
But yeah, what about you? Would you say there's anything you learned from your first ever prep?
When I first wanted to get into competing, I think it was in 2016. The best thing that I did, though I wish I took more time off to build before stepping on stage, I asked a coach in India, his name's Viraj, and I was like, I want to compete. Let's do this. And he's like, no. Straight up. He was like, you're not ready. You need to train for a year before even thinking about it. And I got upset hearing that. I was like, shit, I really thought highly of myself. I thought that I was ready. But having someone be like very honest with me and tell me that I needed that year just lit this fire in me. And it was good. I needed that. So yeah, to anybody who's thinking of stepping on stage, make sure that you have a year or more dedicated 100%. To build muscle, or else, like Sammy said, you're gonna step on stage and you don't even look like you deserve to be up there.
Yeah, and it's just sad.
Yeah,
not wasted, but you've dedicated so much time to dieting, which is not easy if you do it correctly. If you train hard and you get lean enough, you know, you put a lot of time and effort into it. You miss out on occasions, and then to step on stage and not even look like you've done anything, like, that's really upsetting to do, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, just make sure that you're realistic with where you're at in your fitness journey.
Another thing that I wish I had after my first show was a plan. I did not know what to do. Like, I didn't have a reverse diet. I think I just continued eating the same way that I was during prep, and then I'd catch myself binging. Yeah, that got really ugly, and then I gained weight, and guess what I did? The worst thing that any competitor could do is I hopped right back into a new show. I was like, oh, gained some weight. Okay, maybe I should just do a show that's 3 months from now. And then I went again to another cut. And guess what? After that second show, I didn't have a plan either. So it was worse.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that's one of the things that a lot of people don't look at, is like what happens after you compete.
Yeah.
You can't just keep like chasing that next show. You need to accept the different stages of, I guess, being an athlete.
Exactly. Embrace it. I did it.
Yeah, 100%. And just on the topic of like eating disorders, so I do think quite a lot of people who compete struggle with eating disorders. A lot of them don't admit it. They don't talk about it because for some reason it's looked and seen as a weakness.
It's frowned upon.
Yeah. I don't know why, because if everyone talked about it, I think people would be a lot more aware.
Normalize it. Yeah.
And I had quite a big issue. And I don't know what mine exactly stemmed from. I don't think it was necessarily prep. I think it was before my prep, I was on the paleo diet. So I literally had 0 carbs. So I had this like obsession with carbohydrates when I was allowed to eat them. And after my competition, because I was restricted for so long, I was like an animal. I couldn't stop eating. I was never full.
Never full.
Yeah, and it was so bad because like at that time, I would say I did not have any support post-show. So again, touching on that whole like plan post-show, I didn't really have a proper plan. And it was really sad because I regained all of the weight that I lost for the prep. And that makes you feel so bad. I did not want to go out. I didn't even want to go to my gym. I wanted to change gyms. I didn't post anything on social media. I just wanted to post throwbacks like, oh, this was me when I did this. And it's like, you look at my social media and you're like, wait, didn't that happen like a year ago? Why is she still talking about it now? And it's because literally you focus so much on the competing that you feel like, wow, I'm like a different person now. Like I can't just post what I look like. It's embarrassing.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have any eating disorder, underlying eating disorder, you need to make sure you let your coach know about this, because like it's gonna come out sooner or later.
It will.
And I don't know how comfortable you're talking about like the struggles that you've had, but I know that Annabelle had struggle last time that she came out of prep, and I think it's because she was on very restrictive diet plans in the past.
Yeah.
So that's why, you know, the first prep we ever did together, it wasn't enough time for her to adjust to a flexible diet. So we decided to go ahead with a meal plan, and obviously she stuck to her meal plan and everything was fine. But when she came out of her prep, she was struggling to obviously stay on plan. And I literally had the same thing. I was on a meal plan my first prep because my coach put me on a meal plan. And I just wanted to eat everything. So it's like it's normal, as in like it's something that a lot of people do struggle with in the industry.
Yeah.
Ways to make it better. And I think to some extent, everyone will always have a bit of food focused after a show. No matter how well you plan your prep out, you will want those cookies on Instagram.
I was just trying to think what last show that we did together, you're a pro, but before that it was the pro card win. And I'm trying to think, how was that pro card win like post show period? And I feel like I can't think like I traveled. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
I think I had 2 weeks where I kind of followed the meal plan, and then I traveled and I was like, okay, no, I enjoy it.
Yeah.
I didn't even have a hard time because I ate whatever I wanted to. And yes, I gained a lot.
Yeah.
When I came back, do you remember the pictures that I sent you? Like in February, I was so fluffy.
Yeah.
But this one, yeah, till date, it's still hard.
Yeah.
I struggle with it. Just now, things are getting better.
Yeah.
Where I'm not as food focused. Do I feel like I could eat more? Yes. But I'm not like staring at my cabinet in the middle of the night thinking, what can I have? But
like Annabelle said, I think you will always, as long as you're in this specific sport, like obviously if you're in like an Olympic athlete, it's different because you're training for performance, right?
Yeah.
A lot of it is about how you look, how lean you are, reaching a certain condition for your competition. And unfortunately with that means that food is going to be restricted all the time. As long as you're in the sport, even in off season, you're restricted because you have to stick to specific macros. And if you don't, there are people who don't stick to specific macros in off season. That's fine. But what do you think is going to give you better results? Knowing what you're having in your off season and making sure you're progressively overloading your food as well, or just kind of winging it and then doing a 12-week prep and wondering why you didn't get as lean as you could have because you didn't know what you were eating in the off season, you know? So I think it's just important to understand that. And I don't know if you'd agree with this, Annabelle, but the more you do it, that you stay in this industry,
like the better you get,
it becomes and the better you deal with it. And you get to a point where you're like, when you're at Annabelle's level and you're a pro, you're like, you know what, like this is kind of my career, so I'm just gonna get on with it. Where so many people complain like, oh yeah, I wish I could have this, I wish I could have that.
I want to slap them in the face.
Yeah, I think it's fun to have occasions and like, you know, if it's your birthday or some sort of, I don't know, holiday, that's fine. But you know, if you're going to be sat there feeling sorry for yourself, like, oh, I really want to lose weight, but I also really want to eat this. Like the only person who cares is you. So you just have to suck it up is the reality of it.
Another thing before I forget, it just popped into my head. And it's actually a question to you. You said that if someone has an eating disorder or eating disorder like tendencies, they should let their coach know before competing. But even if they're not competing, they should let us know.
Yeah, 100%.
Right?
Always
there was a girl who didn't let me know that she had something, and I had her track macros. And then she started getting very obsessive over the numbers. And then that just triggered her. So we had to take a step back, and I'm like, okay, forget about macros. And then I saw that a different approach was better with her. But yeah, I think just being open and honest about that, no matter if you're competing or not, is important.
100%. And if, like, again, I'm not using names, but I did have a coach in the past. It was the person who I did my first competition prep with. She was the kind of coach that if you told her that you went off plan, because I did tell her I went off plan, she got so pissed off. And after that time, I knew I couldn't tell her again, because if I told her again,
not the relationship that you want with your coach. You want to be open and honest. Your coach can't make you feel like they're there to keep you in check and put you in place.
Yeah.
But if she scares you off like that, I'm sure that you didn't want to open up anymore. Yeah. Anytime something happened, you tried to hide it, didn't you?
Yeah. And I think it's important for a coach to, so there's two types of coaches. There's the ones like me who are very, like, they just say how it is, you know? Yeah. And I personally, the reason I'm like that is because I don't see the point in sugarcoating something when someone needs to know the honest truth, but I don't make them feel guilty about it. Like, have I ever made you feel guilty about it?
Never.
I've just said, look, this is the reality. Let's figure out how we can move forward, right?
You're like a mom. You like distance, but you love.
Yeah. And I think it's important to, like, for most people, I think that they would do well with that, you know, having someone be honest with them, because it kind of gives you a bit of a kick up the ass. Yeah. It makes you go like, okay, yeah, I need to get my shit together. And that's exactly what happened with Annabelle's post show. You know, she had a few occasions and we thought, you know what, we need to fix this. Whereas if you're just a coach who goes, oh yeah, don't worry, like, it's just an occasion, you're in off season now, the client never learns from that and they just continue the same habits. And then what happens is it's 2 months post show and they're up like 10 kilos. And then you've actually made your job harder as a coach because you're like, shit, they're in a bad position. And then the poor client is now in a position where their body isn't ready to go into another fat loss phase. And now they're just carrying this body fat in off season that they really don't need to be carrying.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's very important for both the coach and the client to, you know, be honest, talk about things.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's pretty much the main kind of.
We could go on and on. There's so much.
There's so many things that, you know, you could make a whole list of, but the main things for contest prep is like, it's not that you need to understand it's not the same thing as a fat loss phase, and that it does take a lot more to get into it. And, you know, that's just the reality of it. And you need to ask yourself, like, what is your purpose of competing? Are you looking to get a pro card? Are you looking to get to Olympia? Okay, then you're going to be in this for the long run. So you need to be very patient and you need to put the work in and make it more of like a lifestyle change. If you're doing it because, you know how some people like go, I want to run a marathon in my life.
Right. Just like check off the list. I did this.
In that case, it's completely up to you how you do it, how long you train for, whatever.
Right.
But if you want to be an athlete, it's not like, it makes me cringe when I see people write as their goal, like, I want a pro card, and I look at what they're currently doing and they've literally been training for like 5 months and they don't even know how to train correctly. It's like, you need to earn the right to even want that. Like, I know that sounds quite, but it's serious.
No, but it's true.
People think it's like a handout thing, you know? It's not though. Like, yeah, I just think that.
And I think if you really want to take it to that level, be super committed as an athlete, take it seriously, you also need to look at your life and see if you are in a good position to compete. Because when you're competing, you are laser focused and you don't care about anything else. It is so selfish, a little bit, but everything is prioritized around me, my sleep, my training, my meals.
Yeah.
And if you have a job that doesn't allow that, or you can't be flexible enough to like incorporate that, then maybe it's not the best to compete.
Yeah, 100%. And to use it as an example, so I have a client, I know you'll know who she is. Her name is Arundhati.
Oh yeah.
I'm sure she won't mind me saying this, but
no, probably not.
She's just left her job. And the reason she's left her job is because, like one of her goals is to get a pro card, and she trains really hard. And with her job, she has weeks where she can't train because it's that much work. And like she has a home set up at home, like a gym set up at home.
Yeah, I saw.
Yeah, and obviously like that really helps, but she's gotten to the point where, you know, she's decided that she wants to pursue competing. It's one of her, you know, biggest hobbies, and she's decided to change jobs to one that can actually allow her to train normally, you know. And that's a huge thing to do, but I do also think that it's important. If it's a priority for you, then you need to do that.
Yeah.
Because it is very demanding.
Extremely.
It's not easy.
No, it isn't.
And it's
and
true.
then if you stress, if you prep in a stressful environment, your body's not going to respond too, because we saw how much stress affects the body. Whew, stress and sleep, huge.
Yeah. So make sure that you look at all those things and focus on getting yourself into a good place, not only with food and training, but like your whole life, like relationships, finances, all of that stuff, because competing isn't cheap either, is it?
Nope.
So
especially if you're traveling for a show.
Yeah.
Bikini, hair, tan, makeup.
Especially for females, it's crazy. You know, for guys, like if you think about it, all they need is like a haircut, some hair gel, and like a pair of board shorts that you can buy off of.
That's it.
What is that place in the US called? Something Sun. It's a very famous shop in the US. PacSun. That's it. You can just go in there and just buy a pair of shorts. Whereas for girls, you have to find a makeup artist. You have to find a hair person. Bikini.
And you know what's funny? We drop like 1,500, 2,000 in a show, and guess what? The prize money doesn't even cover that. Sometimes.
That's so true.
It's crazy.
But yeah, I think that's pretty much it for
today's episode.
Today's episode, yeah. I quite like keeping them shorter because I feel like it's a lot easier to stay engaged. We can make them more often. We're not doing these like 2-hour episodes.
Yeah.
So
how long was this one? This one's a bit longer than last, wasn't it?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, honestly, guys, anything that you want to see or hear about, please message one of us or
leave in the comment section down below.
On YouTube. I know a lot of people now spend more time on Instagram than YouTube. And I feel like some people do post IGTV videos of the podcasts. But again, it depends what you guys want to see and whether you want it on YouTube, on Spotify, on iTunes, whatever. But yeah, we will speak to you soon.
Yeah, see you in the next one.